All right, we are live.
All right, welcome back to TogetherTec board meeting, which we now hold once a month, come rain or shine. First Saturday. We don't know what we're talking about, but hey. So, Adi, you had mentioned something you wanted to do under the Together, or possibly do under the TogetherTec umbrella.
Yep.
Seems like a good place to start.
Sounds good. So one of the main things I think I'm trying to solve, and to I think pretty much the same extent that Bentley's trying to solve, is restoring trust in information. And so one of the things I wanted to do was to start doing interviews, like just with any random person, probably people who are sort of more staunchly in one camp or another, and just try to figure out like what do they need to trust the information? What did they the information that they trust right now, why do they trust it? Like what did what research did they do? Is it more that they don't trust other information sources? Just all the information around that. And then on the flip side, and I think this is where it starts to fall more under the TogetherTec umbrella, is for any kind of organization, whether it's a for-profit corporation, a government, a non-profit organization. What would they need to trust that? Like if they're trying to do important things, what would they need to know about that organization, from the organization itself, the history, who's involved, all that kind of thing? What does it look like to trust an organization? Is one of the long-term things that I would like. I'm not sure if it happens under TogetherTec or something else, is starting to come up with some kind of almost a certification for, hey, based on 100 of these trust interviews, this is what the majority of people said that they needed in order to trust an organization. So we arrange it into sort of tiers on, here's like the really strict, the hardest to achieve, that might be level 3. And then you start to sort of say, okay, at level 1, people would still be more willing to trust this organization if it meets these criteria, and then start to build that framework around, here's what you need to do as an organization in order to start to build trust.
So you're looking to do interviews.
Yeah.
That's what you're okay. Because I also noticed, not that you necessarily want to do under the TogetherTec umbrella, Bentley, but you were looking for a name with the debate stuff, and it seems to be right in, in alignment.
Yeah, it's very similar. So, Adriel, one quick question. Have you heard of street epistemology?
No.
So Google that. There's a group, and basically one of the things you said is, I think you said, like, why do you believe in an organization? But I think someone there also said something about why do you kind of believe what you believe,
right,
or how you came to that. So the street epistemologists have found a great way to get people to be less polarized and to be open to new ideas is to actually ask, like if you ask someone, do you know how the toilet works? Most people go, oh yeah, I know how it works. And then you ask them to explain it, and they realize, they get more humble because they think through it and they realize how much more complicated it is. So the street epistemologists have a whole process of doing that, and they actually interview people in public. But I think you're coming at a slightly different angle, but some of their techniques, and also they would be a good thing to point to and say, here's some of the techniques we're using, and give them a plug as well. So my podcast idea was, so I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to market GoalieBot, and what I want to do is, and with the Canonical Debate Lab group, is like take a trending debate that's out there and talk about how the different sides are. So like, I guess it was probably that interview about COVID. Hopefully I won't get banned for saying that. And another podcast did kind of a rebuttal on some of their takes. So to then us have a group and talk about the pros and cons of both sides, but also talk about how they may have been more convincing if they approached those facts in that debate a different way, by using skills like listening and empathy and other stuff like that. So I threw out some names on Facebook and Twitter, although I think one of the names I kind of like that I didn't think of till later is A Better Response. So I was talking about how to respond efficiently. Anyways, but maybe we should collaborate and see if there's enough overlap that we want to do it together.
Yeah.
And then we could promote our own projects as that.
Sounds like there's a lot of overlap, because the underlying idea is, and I think that this is again where probably all three of us sort of are in alignment, is the current approach of discourse really doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like the posting things that your group is already going to agree with the underlying notion of I'm just doing it to get likes on Facebook and have all my friends violently agree with me. That's never going to appeal to the opposite side or people in the middle, because it's always like super inflammatory and insulting people and just not useful to the discussion whatsoever.
And a blog post that I want to make is that as long as you're kind of preaching to the choir or speaking to someone who's already kind of leaning your way, if you post something like that, you're actively polarizing the conversation, because it's pushing the other people away. So I was going to say your perfect audience is your worst enemy. I'm thinking of the title, the blog title. It's like when you're shooting stuff out and it's to the general public, you need to be aiming at the person that's most skeptical. Otherwise, you're creating polarization, and kind of mucking up the commons. So that's a blog post I got to write. And I'm working with Open Global Mind. They're also talking about the generative commons. So how can we have a commons place? And one of the things they're talking about is also how can they create kind of short narrative videos, not create, even just find short narrative videos, but one of that help people kind of understand both sides a little bit better and kind of depolarize. But one of the things that they were talking about, we want to have one for like people that are completely skeptical of this idea, and then one for people that agree. And I'm like, let's not worry about the one for people that can agree, because they are already kind of leaning, because they can find that content's out there. The thing that doesn't exist,
Facebook.
Yeah, right. The thing that we need to find and bring together is the really good videos that is convincing to someone who's already poisoned or opposes that idea. And there may not be it, and then maybe we should start creating it, maybe crowdfunding videos or something.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I've been trying to think of, I think, kind of similar things where it's some analogies to think about, how do we talk about that discussion? And the one that has been coming to mind that I'm trying to figure out how to frame is, the parable, the boy that cried wolf. And that, like, the villagers that didn't believe the boy who's crying wolf, they don't love wolf attacks. They just don't trust the person that's talking about the wolves, because they spent the last while undermining their own credibility, and now that it's important, people are getting mad at the people that don't trust the boy. But it's kind of the boy's fault. So that's the whole point of the parable, but that's lost in the current conversation. So we're trying to sort of figure out how to talk about that, and it might just end up being like a 2 to 3 minute video and maybe a slight tweak to it. But it's interesting that we're all sort of going off on our own and then coming back, and sort of having the same, which is fair, because we're all seeing the same public conversation play out. We're like, this is so not useful.
One of the things I've been dealing with in the last month or so is this concept between belief and understanding. And I don't think I've talked about it in this exact space. I know I've talked about it with Adriel. So just the brief history of with our sister actually having a conversation about flat earthers versus globists. I don't know, like other people, and how I always did have the understanding that like you could have the flat earthers vote top 10 of their flat earth people and take them up in a rocket, and they'd see the world as round, and then they could come back down, and then they would no longer be part of their group because their group would abandon them. But that's okay, right? Like they would at least see that the world is round. And one of the things my sister pointed out that like kind of blew my mind was, no, actually they wouldn't. They would see a flat earth. And whether or not you believe that or not, there was this understanding, this difference between belief and understanding. And so that was just the backstory, because I've been playing with the belief and understanding since then of like, okay, well, to believe something, you actually have to let go of your rope before getting the next one. Like in order to be able to believe that the earth is flat, you have to stop believing the earth is sphere, right? So whereas understanding is different. Understanding is like, what is it to believe that the earth is flat? Like, how does an eclipse work? Wait a minute, what about this thing? And without a like gotcha moment, like truly curious, like how does this work for you? And there's something about if as a society we can start focusing more on understanding, whereas we're always focusing on belief. And even me, I'm like constantly trying to convince people instead of trying to explain something. You're trying to convince them, right? Even if I'm explaining it, it's with the underlining, so you'll believe it too, so that I can, you know, like come to my side. And it's like, if we can get to understanding instead, get the other side to explain it, right? Like whatever side you're on, it's not about changing their belief. It's about getting them to, I don't know, be able to tell you back what you said. That's part of the, like the not nonviolent communication. It's one of the closer ones to that though, of like, did you actually understand me? What did I say?
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if it's kind of the reverse of the street epistemology thing, where instead of people asking you why you believe, it's you saying you go ahead and volunteering that information, but with it sounds the same thing as throwing facts at people and stuff, but really the attitude is different. And then you might phrase it differently. It's like, well, let me just kind of let you know how I kind of came to this conclusion. It wasn't just that I sat in elementary school and they taught me this and I just sheepishly believed it, right? When someone said that the earth was flat and I kind of like, you know, did some research, or, you know, I looked up at the moon and realized it's a sphere. Try not to do it as sarcastically as I just did. Lots of bad habits. Yeah, that's very interesting. I like that idea, Jubilee. That could be one of the techniques that we could discuss in the videos. I do also have, we can continue on this topic, but also there's a project called Trove, which used to be Catalyst, that Vincent Arena, who's been in Game B a bit, does. And it's a community of communities, and it's a place to track your projects, your members, your requests, and stuff like that. So it's the tool we've been trying to build for 2 years. So I could demo through that and show the Game B space that I'm an admin of, and I'm happy to give it to anyone else. I don't think Jimret has time, but you know, so I could demo that as well.
Yeah, I'd love to see. It's actually demoable, therefore not just a thought experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I would love to
It's
see
actually
that.
it's in production use actually, and we have access, so we can start using it.
That other person who was gonna, I can't remember his name, who was gonna, I know it was not Vincent, who was gonna come here last month, and then he contacted me asking, and I never responded because I couldn't figure out how to explain. It was like, is there a list of projects? Yes, dozens, none of them complete. No one wants to do that again. No, like, it's like if there's one person who that's truly their project, okay. And Vincent, I feel, is a more follow through person.
Yeah, he's actually
some of the other ones, and so yeah.
And he also has enough groups kind of interested in participating that there's kind of a momentum now in this. And what's interesting, he also built all this with no code tools, so he didn't write any code. He ended up going with Bubble, in case people are curious. Let me figure out how to share my screen.
It's a thing at the bottom to share, but I don't know if one of us has to change the settings.
No,
so
I lost. I can't even see myself. I lost my video because I was playing with my windows. Here we go. Share screen.
I think it'll just pop up down below, and then we can choose to put it up there.
Okay, there we go. So this is kind of the home page. I guess this is after I'm logged in. Oh, yeah, thank you. So I think this is after I'm logged in. Yeah, I got to sign out up here. And I honestly haven't played with it that much. So it says joined networks, open global mind, but I should have a Game B in this list. Maybe because I'm an admin of that, it's not showing up on my communities. Interesting. Or maybe I have my logins wrong. Anyways, go to networks. And there should be a Game B project, or a Game B, not Game B projects. Because we decided not to, it's a list of projects, so it's just the Game B thing. I guess I should have practiced with this before. I did go in there and I've made a Gullybot project. Actually, you know what? It's probably communities. Okay, so here's the Game B community, and you can see there's quite a few in here. And we probably need to update all this.
So what is this site called now? It got changed from Catalyst to which?
Oh, so yeah, it's still under Catalyst.directory, but it's going to be renamed to Trove because Catalyst was already used in something similar. So I don't know what the actual domain name's going to be, but that's going to be the name change. So I apologize. I must have lost access. There's Game B. Let's see if it takes me to the. See, so it's taking me. So we're in the list, and it's taking me to the list. But there's a. You know, if we want to keep this more entertaining than watch me just fiddle around with this, we can continue on another topic, and then I can figure out what I'm doing wrong while we're talking.
Okay.
So I can stop sharing.
It's interesting as you were describing the street epistemology, and sort of like, you know, as they would actually talk to people and figure out like, oh, I don't know how that works. In the conversations that I've had with people so far, like about trust, just, you know, sort of as it comes up naturally, or like they'll ask me, you know, about Conferati or WikiLex, and I'll sort of, you know, have a conversation with them about that. It does, the only answers I've gotten that I've actually felt were honest were basically, I pick information sources that I already agree with. Is it essentially what like the few people that were actually willing to engage, and not just like, no, it's right and I can't really prove anything and don't have any examples, but I just picked the correct one. When people are actually willing to dive in, that's I think the only answer I've gotten from people who've actually engaged at some sort of a meaningful level, I feel, which I mean, personally, I think is the only honest answer right now, but I'm open to being wrong.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it is. I mean, right now we don't have any other way other than trusting. It just takes too much thought to research every topic down minutely.
Yeah,
I think the people who think they've done research are the most dangerous. Like the ones who fully are like, oh, I'm not doing research on that, I'm good. But the ones who are like, I've done my research. No, you haven't. Yeah, like I know what I don't know on most topics, and I feel like I've never done enough research. And at the same time, when my brain changed and I wasn't able to as easily put in new information, I forgot what I was saying.
It's about like doing research and stuff. I've had to have the discussion. Both my mom's doctor and her heart doctor, of course, want her on statins, and I'm like, well, with her diet, the current studies, I mean, yes, 90% of the people, that's a good idea, but in her diet, what the statins prevent, she's already preventing through diet, according to the studies, which you haven't read, but. You know, I'm not coming in saying it's absolutely true, but it's kind of like, I don't know that they have the time also to refute my claims. And it'd be okay if the statins didn't have any side effects. So I need to look at the side effects of those the potential side effects, and then decide whether it's worth arguing with them about, or just go ahead and, you know, take them at, you know, take their advice, which is based on works for 9% of people, and just hope it's not too bad in a specific circumstance.
There's a TED talk on risk. I don't know if it's about statin. It's definitely about something to do with heart and how people take medication. And there's something in that talk, and I couldn't find it for the longest time. And then I watched a random TED talk and was like, oh, it's this one on risk, where it's a formula for not just will you die if you take this medication, or are there side effects? It's like how many people have to actually take this medication to prevent a heart attack. It's basically like compared to how many people are adversely affected by this, right? And that number is almost always bad, and doctors never know that number. And so asking it never goes well. But at the same time, it's like, right, how many people need to take this to prevent one heart attack? You're probably most interested in preventing a specific one, like your loved one or yours. And it's interesting. And what I was going to say before about research was that we live in a world that is designed for the ignorant. It actually pays more to be ignorant, because if you're the only one who knows something, or a part of a tiny group that knows something, it's just more frustrating. Like, it's just like, oh, and you're not going to do the research, even if you've done the research. Being in a world that doesn't have access to research and doesn't trust and understand it, you're at a disadvantage. Whereas people that can go through life with blinders on and can just like, oh, things aren't risky, just positive thoughts. Just like, think that your heart won't have a heart attack and you'll be fine. And a lot of those people are the ones who are doing public policy, because they're the ones who get into power, because they're the ones who can look like they know what they're. I did the research. I did all the research.
They can be super confident about something, and there's always a way to sort of skirt being wrong, right? Like, if someone died, they're like, well, then they weren't being positive. Even though they looked positive, they weren't being positive. So I'm positive that they weren't being positive.
And so we really do need, like, I have gotten less obsessed with sense making projects and the need for sense making, partly because there's other people on it. It's like good because the world needs it. Like, the world desperately needs to be able to look at, why do we trust things? How do we trust things? And have that in a more neutral way. But I'm still going to go with my gut. I'm still going to go with what has been proven to me, but to be able to not, and I'm logical, and I need the studies to be able to back that gut up. And yet I could still say, and sorry, I'm going to continue drinking coffee, even if it causes XYZ, because I enjoy it, or because it also has these other benefits, or I'm not being paid by the tea company.
Yeah. or because the research seems to shift every 6 months as to whether it's good or bad, or will kill you instantly or make you immortal. Like, okay, you guys, go and do some long-term stuff. Once there's a fair amount of consensus, then maybe we'll talk. Maybe.
Yeah, and that's kind of that location for the information also to go. That's kind of what Gollybot is. So it's a place to go and see all the studies kind of put into context. So all that information, but not quite there yet. Although I am going to start marketing it, and hopefully people will come back and complain. And I had an anonymous forum. So people, and it's hosted by a different company that does anonymous stuff. So I don't know who's adding the comments. So that'll be interesting for people to do it without getting social blowback.
I do find that with the like each individual conversation, we're only willing to have about like each individual topic, whether it's climate change or the current situation or flat earthers. And one of the things that's desperately needed is to take a step back, be like, so what do all these conversations have in common? And what do we need to have sort of one consistent spot to say, here's how we discuss that information. Here's what the bar is for if we should, trust the current prevailing thought, and then what does it take for someone to challenge that? Because the thing that seems to be the way people are going, which I find disturbing, is that just believe what the majority of people believe, which only makes sense if we know everything. If science is done and we've discovered everything that we could discover, then yeah, okay, go ahead and agree with the majority on every topic. But if it's not that way, then we really need a model to say, what do we need to look at? If there's one person challenging the status quo, what do we need to look at in order for them to actually have clout versus are they just making noise?
And I think a lot of that comes from this belief versus understanding, including in the scientific community, and including that if this new scientific paper is attacking my belief, I have to let go of the belief to get to yours, versus understanding what is this paper and how does it impact what I know and what is coming next, versus that belief piece that does mean you have to let it go. And we all have very strong beliefs on things like science and how things work, and our doctor told us, and we go to doctors, and we it's Right. Do they understand? They just want you to believe them. They don't want to give you the understanding because they don't know how the toilet works. Right? They don't know how it works to explain it to you. Someone just told them you use a toilet. Like it's
Yeah.
And that, I think, go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say that point about someone coming in and disagreeing, and often they're either not heard or they're dismissed, or there are people who are disbelieving and they're ganging up and flooding the system. So I hate to keep bringing up Gullybot, but that's exactly the thing is they can add their reason behind like street epistemology in the system, and that will change the top score until someone comes in and says what's wrong with that. So it does kind of give them the power, but limits them from. I mean, you could still kind of spam the system, but it doesn't really make sense to spam it in the same way. And I have Trove up and running, so I can move to the demo of that whenever we're ready.
Cool.
I guess I'll go ahead.
Maybe we'll give her.
I don't think she'll mind if we start talking about it.
Sure. Yeah, that's true.
So this is my login. So these are the 3 groups that I belong to. So there's Game B, Kiko Lab, and Flotilla. I can go to the dashboard for Game B. So in here you can see members. We don't have very many people in here yet. And then we have a list of links, which is blank. So projects, I have Gullybot as part of the project. And then I think we have some other ideas. Some of this data may be test data, but basically, if you have a project, you could go in here and add a new project. If you have events, you can add your events. And what's great is I think it's fairly easy for someone to subscribe to this list of events and put it in a calendaring system, although I don't see the button at the moment. Then we have a place for resources. These may be this is the Game B one. And then some fancy kind of visualizations to show the relationship. So Game B is like related to TogetherTec. Anyway, so this is kind of, it hits the things I think we still need to work on.
So for the projects, the projects being related to, it looks like the group is Game B, and then you can go to projects. Is there like, can a project only belong to one group? Like, is it sort of a grouping of projects?
It can actually belong to multiple groups. So
cool.
My Gullybot project is in
I see.
So the Game B, Open Global Mind, Kiko Lab, and TogetherTec.
Okay, cool.
We might take out TogetherTec because I think the main thing is Game. I think if we just do it under Game B, since it's mostly about projects, then I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting. Like on the projects, you can say, "Here's what I need help with: visibility, funding, expertise, and stuff."
Right.
How I might compensate people that are doing the skills we're seeking. What we're open to. So I'm open to merging projects if someone has something better.
That's cool. I like that.
A bit more easier to read. And then you have your little. This is just a photo, so that text comes from my site. So, yeah. So we can start adding people to this thing, and they can make a list. Or they could start doing that, and we can also. See. So
is it possible to is there a link to post in Game B projects to have people put theirs under, and like so that it is under Game B, or they don't have to figure out kind of how to, you know what I'm saying, like directly put it under?
So they'll have to log in and yeah, they'll so I guess catalyst.network/community/Game B would take them there. They would have to probably create a login and probably right now get approved by Vincent. And then they could go into the projects tab and hit the add project button. So
because it would be a great way to finally do what so many people try to do in the Game B projects, and I like that this is an umbrella project collector. It's doing it from various different ones that are all adjacent. So since it's already doing that and not just wanting to do that, I think that that's more powerful, has more potential than a lot of these.
Oh, we're getting some comments in.
I think that was
from Steve. I wasn't looking.
Just from earlier. Oh no! Oh, he said a few things. I was just because he had said the Earth catastrophe, so I can't even say the word.
So I put the main link in there. Y'all can play around with it, and if you have trouble getting access, just reach out to me or message me, and we'll figure it out with Vincent. But yeah, we should start playing with it, and then we eventually need to update our that announcement that I have at the top, this introduction to Game B projects, and probably put this in there.
Right, that's interesting. Like, when you talked about getting rid of TogetherTec in this list and just doing Game B, I would sort of argue the opposite, just because in my mind, Game B is still a bit too nebulous and people can't even agree on what it is. But TogetherTec is at least a thing that there's the three of us and other people can come and and join and do stuff, and we can sort of set a scope of what TogetherTec is or isn't, and we don't have to consult with everyone else in Game B.
Yeah, that's a valid point. The counter kind of thing is that Game B is kind of a bigger, more well-known thing. I
guess
so.
In my mind, this whole thing is already Game B, because Game B is sort of that trying to work together. And yeah, I guess it would be good to have a way to sort of be able to use like the name recognition of Game B to show people like, yep, if you're interested in Game B and you found this site, you're in the right spot.
Yeah.
But then I think it's also good to have all these sort of attempts at doing Game B, because it sounds like we're, far from being the first and only group to be trying to sort of do this meta conversation on the project of projects and trying to figure out how to help align people. And so I think we kind of need both to allow for these attempts while also sort of capitalizing on the Game B sort of brand, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. And see, also, if I'm creating an event, this is kind of neat. You can have multiple organizations invited to the event that you're a member of.
Oh, cool.
And say, whether it's the privacy, public, local, private, restricted. So whether other groups can see it or just anyone on the internet. And I guess, we don't have any events right now.
Are there umbrella organizations as far as like you can tell who's part of what?
Yes. So first of all, there's a concept of a network, which is I think that's just a categorization of communities, and then communities. So we have kind of this. So we have TogetherTec. He just has is related to at the moment. So I don't know if he's kind of figured out the parent-child, and also for like Open Global Mind, the concept is that there'll be projects that belong to multiple top-level groups, because it's intergroup coordination. So let's see what. Yeah, it's interesting that it doesn't navigate to TogetherTec. So there's no way for me to drill around further. It's just one direction, one step away. I would think that you could click and it would show the related ones to get TogetherTec. Although, so I'm not quite sure, but there is a concept of a project could member multiple groups, and I think he's trying to figure out how to map that multi-group interrelation and subgroups of groups and subgroups of subgroups, right? So I don't think he's quite figured all that out yet.
I don't think we figured when you're like figured out the parent and child. Like, have we figured out like how to Game B and TogetherTec which is which? Because it's like I can see it both ways. And most people who are in Game B projects are there because of Game B. There are some people who aren't. Some people who have nothing to do with Game B and they're more because of TogetherTec. But at the same time, it's like the three of us are very clearly TogetherTec and also Game B. But most people, I think, would be more Game B than TogetherTec. And yet at the same time, like Adriel said, we've got no control over Game B. It is just its own umbrella organization. Like, it is just a placeholder for OmniWin Future.
Right.
Yeah.
And then everyone tries to come into Game B and umbrella them, right? Like, no.
Yeah.
I have Game C and D. No, you don't. No, you really don't.
It is interesting. I didn't realize he does say, like, talks about the Stoa and shares values with the Zeitgeist movement.
Oh, cool.
So he does have some related things. And I don't know quite how to edit this content. So somewhere there should be a way for someone, and some of this he's still working on how to figure out these relationships.
Yeah, and I think to Julie's point, there's like, I wouldn't know where WikiElection fits in here, because like it's kind of related to Game B and kind of related to TogetherTec, but also not. Like, it's
I mean, I would say I would still probably add that as a project rather than a community, unless you want to. And then it really doesn't show up on this map because this is the map of the community interrelationships.
right.
But I'd do a project and put it. And so I do think we'd need to either remove TogetherTec or Game B, because I think it's such a Venn diagram overlap that it'll be pretty duplicative.
Are there any other? So like, this is kind of trying to be the list that we've talked about, but do we know of any other groups within Game B that are kind of trying to be like the project of projects, like actually, sort of like providing some materials to project owners?
I don't think so. I'm not aware of any. I haven't noticed any. I mean, every once in a while someone comes in and says, hey, where's the list of projects? Or I want to build a list of projects, just like we did. But I haven't seen anyone actually getting much further than that. So we might experiment by putting our next call in this calendar. I mean, no one's really seeing it yet. And we still have to, the problem is we still have to cross-post to Facebook because we're using StreamYard and stuff. But so it's kind of extra work when we're volunteers.
Yeah,
but
and we won't be like, it would be nice if we could post the event, like now-ish, and then have it be in there the whole time, and then up to a week before, because I think you can only post Facebook ones like up to a week in advance. And so I guess that would be nice to sort of have that, and to say like, hey, the link will be coming.
Yeah.
And I guess that's sort of twofold. There's the third. There's going to be here's the link to watch, and then a separate here's a link to join, which I guess the conferencing video URL will be the join link, and then the event description would probably have the watch link.
Now, I don't know which time zone. I assume it's my time zone, which is 1400. Although it's kind of boring to watch me fill this out, but Game B and C, and then theoretically, I'm not a member of TogetherTec, so. And of course, it's communities, and I don't know if TogetherTec's listed as a community or a. Let me see, and if y'all were in here, I could add you. So maybe if y'all have a chance to hit that Game B link and see if it's pretty easy to sign up, and I'll see if I can make you admins. Share with communities. Oh, you could share with any community, even though you're not a member. So.
That's really annoying for people.
I can see that being abused pretty quickly.
Yeah, that.
Come to my Tupperware party. Come on.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how it.
Why isn't there
how
an all
works?
option? I said, why isn't there an all option?
Yeah, right. Just share with the world.
Everyone wants what I'm selling.
Oh, and then Yeah, and then these are the open networks, which are kind of like broad categories. So anyone in the, so this is almost the all, collective action and collaboration, maybe that fits us. Event type, summit, project, I guess project meeting? Oh, and I finally have Clubhouse, by the way, if we ever want to do anything there. Their Android version came out.
Did see that, I haven't been using it at all. That one? It's way too small, the URL. Catalyst.network community gaming.
Yeah, I posted it in Facebook if you want to toggle over there and see that. And it's still kind of beta, so like I'm hitting the submit a bit event button, and I don't think it's doing anything. Yeah, it's not submitting. It's probably requiring something that I don't have filled out. Oh, and it's lost everything. Okay, so
that's fun.
Beta. But it has great promise. We just need to figure out the quirks. Yeah, so that's upcoming Trove, used to be Catalyst.
Cool. It definitely shows promise. I really wish that this site would remember the setting that we used before sharing, because it always likes to go to its own view instead of this weird skinny tall version that I think it actually starts off that way, and then if you share and unshare it switches. Anyway.
We don't have control over StreamYard, weirdly enough, which is the...
So Adriel, what do you want to do to push forward on the potential podcast collaboration? Just want to, and I have several other people that have shown interest, so maybe it could be like a, I don't know, what's it called when you have like 3 or 4 people?
Conversation.
Yeah, a conversation. Yeah, around like a round table. Yeah. Panel or round table. And actually, one of the guys is a rhetoric professor in New York. That we were on his podcast with the Canonical Debate Lab and some people in the Canonical Debate Lab. Yeah, so maybe like just a weekly panel. People bring up public debates that are trending and are interesting, and then we kind of discuss the back and forth. Although I like going deep rather than shallow, so maybe it should just be one debate each meeting.
Right. And so is your thought for the blog for it to be a more in-depth dissection of a topic, or is it more like the meta about, the debate about debates?
I think it would be a deep dive into a specific interaction. So hopefully 2 people disagreeing, and then talk about how they could have been more effective in that. Okay. Now your idea, yeah, and then and that would be leading you to examples on effective,
right,
depolarizing.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Potentially having something like what Upgrading Society does. I don't even know if they're still doing their blog or their podcast, but something that's like that feeds into both of your projects, about trust, about that piece of it, but something that like holds them together from one to the next, that has like a scoring and it could even be like the debate itself is just or whatever, the conversation itself is just the podcast, and then where that goes, like WikiLection does the trust quotient with a panel, and Gullybot, you know what I mean, that there's like a piece from that, that's just what's coming up. So I don't know. The other thing though that happens like with the news, and we all know they do this, of like the pro and con side, right? And it's like, well, the climate change scientist versus the one scientist we found that doesn't agree with, and they hold them on the same side because it's like just pro and anti. that there's a problem with everything being the binary, both that you need to find someone and you don't really see what that difference is, and like, okay, but how many climate scientists agree or disagree? I don't care if you're a electrician, like that's not the same. Sorry, engineer, that's not the same as knowing about it. But there's something about not having just two, not having the pro and con, that there's actually not two sides of a story, there's a billion sides to a story. And that's part of the nuance in our current thing that we get canceled over, is like, you're either in one camp and therefore I attribute you all these things, or in the other camp and I attribute you with these all things. And when you actually talk to someone, it's much more nuanced than that. It's like, well, why do you believe that? Where did you get your information from? Why do you trust that information? And so having it be more of a panel with more nuance of how did you get there? And maybe finding people with more diverse than just being, well, I'm a pro, so I stamped pro on me, and I can only ever, I'm dying on the pro hill. Like, it's like, what about this? And
everyone that even differs on one element is obviously anti, and they're my enemy for life.
Yeah.
Could you understand them, maybe? Not let go of your belief and just understand them now.
Yeah, I think taking a single interaction, even like a comment and a response, instead of like a whole topic, will allow us to get down to the nuances of that.
That would be interesting. I would definitely be interested, like in participating in like a pilot of one of those, and then we can sort of see how we can steer it. Because I know that was, as I was planning out, like, so what would a trust interview actually look like? There was that back and forth of like trying to get to something useful, but then also not steering it where it's just obviously me trying to fill in the ask certain questions to get to the thing that I already believe, which then why am I doing this? And so there was the like having specific questions for that person, but not trying to steer them. It'd be like, so what do you trust? What don't you trust? Why? What sort of research did you do? And that would be definitely interesting to try it out and see like what can we actually get. And there's probably going to be a few different passes. And I also like what Julie had said with the like having the conversation, and then anybody involved can sort of do a follow-up video on, hey, through the lens of Wiki Election and Conferati, here's like a follow-up video, or like a part 2 almost of here's it through this lens, and then Bentley can do a lens through Gullybot. Anyone else who's involved, or even people who just watch it later, it can say like, hey, here's sort of how I would dissect that conversation. Here's how I would visualize it. To have the more specific follow-ups, and then you've sort of got your like starting point of that conversation, and then we can all start to talk about, okay, well, here's the different ways to look at it, to sort of build that like, I don't know, weird mesh series of videos. Yeah.
All right, so what I'll probably do on that is I'll probably just pick a date and time and invite you and a couple other people, and who can make it to talk about it can make it. Right. If you can't, then you can watch the video and comment on it. So
yeah. And I'm not, I mean, for like a video like this, it would sort of make sense to just have it live. My initial goal for the trust one was for like probably at least the first 5 to not even publish them. It's just me like trying to figure out what the hell am I asking and what sort of answers am I getting. And there's certain topics that, if discussed, would probably get us flagged and removed. And then that sort of defeats the purpose. And in the end, like, to have a proper conversation, you sort of need to be able to have a conversation with someone that's against the grain and that a lot of people would disagree with. And the idea that like, just because you're having a conversation with the person doesn't mean you agree with them.
Right.
And it's like, I might vastly disagree with this person, but I still want to understand why they came to their conclusion, while understanding that just because they came to a decision that I disagree with, it doesn't mean that like they only came to that decision to spite me. No, they have certain beliefs that led them to a series of other beliefs that led them to where they are. And okay, so what are those underlying beliefs? Because I think that's really what's at play here, but that's a hard conversation to have right now.
Awesome. We got about 7 minutes left. Anyone, any other topics, or does anyone want to summarize?
I mean, I guess the summary, we talked about the trust interviews, and that led into a conversation about the blogs and sort of how, or I guess now we're talking about blogs slash like a panelist show, or I guess I'll call it a roundtable. And those two seem like they might be related, or there might be sort of one blog series that leads into a bunch of other blogs from each topic. And yeah, I mean, I'm totally down with if you want to schedule that, hopefully on the weekends. Then we can take a shot at that and see what that looks like, and if we get blacklisted. And then with the Catalyst Trove thing, it sounds like we're gonna need a bit more beta testing and to figure out sort of how that works, but that seems to have some promise and is probably the furthest along that we've seen that project that we've been talking about for a while, which is the list of projects.
Yeah, so if y'all would log in or create an account if you have time and play around with it a bit, and then let Vincent know or me, and we'll figure it out. And yeah, and anyone else kind of watching or in the group, see how useful it is. And he's really open to changing it, and improving it. So we have an opportunity to make sure it fits our needs.
So when I clicked on the link, it took me to Trove with Game B in it. And then it has a login up in the corner, but when I click on login, there isn't actually an option to sign up. So I'm just going to go to Trove. It's like, it actually just wants me to log in.
That's what Steve was saying in the comments, that he didn't see a way to actually sign up.
Let me see.
So I wonder if like, you just have to get invited or something like that.
Yeah, let me look and see if I can do an invite.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'll play with that and let you know.
Sounds good. Should we say goodbye to the internet?
Yeah.
All right. Bye, Facebook and YouTube.
Bye, internet.